Welcome to the Insider, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm here with Scott Manze. I am Patrick Wilkins. We were off last week for some scheduling conflicts, but we're back. We've got a lot to talk about. The first game that we missed was the Morehead State game. It was a must-win for the Dolphins. They were going against the Morehead State team that hadn't allowed a point in 2 games, and they win 30-26, but they almost wanted to give it away at the end to Morehead State.
It was one of those where we went into it thinking that it was a game in which JU should easily handle Morehead State at home. But since then, really, if you look, Morehead State with a big win over Butler, they're looking like an underdog candidate for one of the top teams in the Pioneer Football League this year. So it's looking less like a bad squeak-out win and more of a good thing they were able to survive that game. But, yeah, it was you saw JU jump out to a lead right before the half and then surrendered 17 straight points to Morehead State in the second half. Just little things still kind of nagging in the back of your mind if you're one of the Dolphin faithful.
One of the exciting things that I was able to pull from the Morehead State game was that the rushing game was able to finally get in its groove. We rushed for well over 200 yards in 2 backs, Ulysses Bryant and Jamal Adjuma. Both of those guys were extremely effective, and it's something that we've looked for as a Dolphin fan base because the run is so pivotal to open up that passing game for Cade Bell.
There have been, so far in 5 games this season, only twice that a running back has gone over 100 yards, and both of them were in that game. First time since 2011 that 2 separate running backs on JU have gone over 100 yards in the same game. Adjuma actually had more yardage. Bryant had the couple of touchdowns, but it was crucial that 1-2 punch got going because they were able to kill some clock, and especially on that final drive, which ended up resulting in just a couple of kneel downs at the end there to ice it. The running game was very important.
I was also excited to see the defense really step up against the Morehead State team and Austin Gay-Hafer, who is arguably the best quarterback in the Pioneer Football League. He's a 3-year starter. Has all the experience and all the intangibles to be effective in pretty much any game, and the defense comes in and in the first half completely shuts him down, and in the second half is able to really hold fast and keep him from taking that lead towards the end of the game.
Certainly. Hafer came in. The one thing that you thought you might see from this defense, this Jacksonville defense, was a turnover. Didn't get one of those for the first time in almost a year, but we're still able to make enough plays when it mattered. This defense has an uncanny ability to stand tall when it has to, and despite the kind of the run that Morehead State was able to go on in the second half, they were able to hold tight there at the end and do just enough to secure that win.
One thing that is concerning moving forward, not only for the last 2 weeks, but moving forward into the season, is Brandon Bears had a couple of games where he's missed some opportunities. He started out the first 3 games as a sure shot, and he misses 3 in the first half of the Morehead State game, misses 1 or 2 last week against Stetson on homecoming. Is that something to be concerned with? Are you concerned with it, Scott?
Well, as a former kicker, I can tell you that half of it is mental, at least half of it. And for Brandon Bear, it looked like in the second half of the Morehead State game, he had gotten over some of that mental issues. I mean, he still made 3 field goals in the game, 3 of the 6 he attempted, but he was able to hit all 3, including one right before the half from 48 yards, which is big.
3 of those were the difference, really, in the game.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. So those he missed a couple against Marist, 1 last week against Stetson as well. He's an all-PFL preseason selection as a kicker, so you don't like to see kind of the struggles he's going through right now. He's a good enough kicker where I think he's going to get it straight, but you're starting to wonder a little bit. I think Coach Bell is going to maintain faith in Brandon despite any of the struggles he's had, because he wants to know he can send him out there and he can hit that potential game winner if need be. And Brandon certainly has shown an ability to do things like that in the past. But you hope that maybe this week against Edward Waters, no real pressure, that if he goes out there to try a field goal or 2, that he makes them both, goes perfect in a game for the first time since the opener against Delaware, and then can kind of put it all behind him.
One thing that's definitely in his favor is that the offense is not short of any points. We saw last week we put up 41 against Stetson.
Finally.
And our first night game in program history, also homecoming for the 2015 season, put up 41 points. Cade Bell balances the offensive attack that we saw last year, last week, the rushing attack against Morehead State. Then he follows it with a 5-touchdown performance against Stetson at homecoming. Really balances the offense. So we're not short of points. That's something that Brandon Bear doesn't really have to be worried about, is that we're going to be short of points. But it is concerning that he's missed a few opportunities recently. Luckily, we haven't needed him to really put the game away. But it is concerning because you never know when you're going to be in that situation. Moving forward, I think it's really, really exciting for Dolphins fans to see Cade Bell get out there and throw for 5 touchdowns against Stetson.
5 touchdowns to 5 different receivers, which is, you speak of the balance, I mean, that says a lot. You've had some injuries to receivers. It was already a young receiving core at the beginning of the year. One of the major questions coming into the season was who was going to step up opposite Andy Jones, the only returning starter. Remember, this offense runs 4 different receivers out there at a time. So they were breaking in 3 new starters this year. One guy, they had a freshman, a junior, and a guy who had played defensive back the year before. So you're sitting there going, man, which one of these guys is going to be able to step up? Some injuries have hampered that a little bit as well, but you're seeing guys rise to the challenge. Austin Lawrence, a true freshman, his first touchdown catch of his career on Saturday. Same with Austin Leach, who had a couple of grabs for 70 yards and a touchdown, the first of his career. An opportunity for some of these young guys to step up and make some plays, and you know that now, as far as offensively is concerned, Coach Bell's got to feel comfortable about it no matter who he's running out there.
And Coach Bell's definitely the type of guy that's a pass-happy offensive coordinator. He's a pass-happy head coach. He was a quarterback himself at the University of Florida. So, it leaves no room for guessing as to what kind of offense he's going to run. But it is comforting to see a lot of these young guys. Amani Williams, 2 weeks ago against Morehead State, gets his first touchdown pass of the season in Andy Jones' absence. Prince Gray was absent from both games. But you see a lot of these young guys stepping up, and it's exciting to see Cade Bell really find himself. He does throw an inopportune pick towards the end of the first half,
right.
But that stalls the drive, and that's really got to stop, in my opinion. The indecisive decision-making when it comes to Cade Bell's passing has become an issue, and it can be an issue further down the season.
He, in the past, would just tuck that and run. And now he's trying to do more with his arm. Part of that is protect himself some, and the other part of it is because he wants to show that he's grown as a passer. But, yeah, he's thrown a handful of picks down inside the 10-yard line this year. And we saw, for example, one late in the game against Delaware. We saw one just in the second quarter against Stetson on Saturday. And it's something I'm sure that they're working on. He's thrown, I'm sure, more interceptions than he would like to see so far this season, but he's also had to wing it around a decent amount. This Saturday, that shouldn't be an issue.
I don't see it being an issue. I think that his decision-making is going to be, right on point with the offense. He's now starting to find himself, in my opinion. The first couple of games this season were kind of a transition. You mentioned a young wide receiving core. He does get an offensive line back that's had a tremendous amount of experience, so that's good for him. He'll remain protected. But you've mentioned previously about his shoulder. He strained it earlier in the season and still shows signs of it not being 100%.
Definitely.
Is that the case?
I mean, I'm looking at him out there. I asked a former linebacker and safety Jordan Dewhurst in the postgame show on Saturday after the game. Did he see the same thing? He was in agreement. The shoulder still bother him. I mean, Cade is part of his arsenal is the ability to roll out and throw on the run. And we're seeing in plays where he is not able to set his feet and deliver the football, the ball's just not coming out very crisp. Now, he's still throwing it with some good zip on a lot of those where he catches. It's a quick read in the pocket. He's able to set the feet, drive through the football. But the ones where he kind of made some hay on a rolling pocket or things like that, the shoulder's just not strong enough to get it with any oomph down the field.
One thing that I really saw from the Stetson game and that I took away from it is that the defense is the backbone of this team. You've now got 11 interceptions on the year, 4 interceptions against Stetson. Armani Sampson returns 1 for a touchdown. We force a fumble. Anytime you're able to force 5 turnovers in a game, you've got the better chance at winning a football game.
No doubt.
This defense looks like the real deal and looks primed and ready to take on anyone in the league.
17 forced turnovers on the year. That's good for second in the football championship subdivision. Multiple times this year, they've had 4 interception games. Marist and now Stetson. 11 INTs on the year. They're just 13 away with 6 games to play of tying last year's record of 24 in a season, and they've got the same kind of ball hawkers back there that could potentially get it done. Maybe even a better ball hawking secondary than last year, not to mention linebackers and other guys that fly around and make some plays as well. So, yeah, this defense has certainly been playmaking. They allow teams to move the ball. They're not going to sit there and be number 1 in yardage given up, but they will be very high in total points allowed, total defense. They rank toward the tops in the PFL, and they're actually 4th, in the country in red zone defense. They just, when they get their backs against the wall, it's when they play their best defense, and teams just aren't able to punch it in consistently against this Dolphin defense.
One thing that I've been concerned with all year long are penalties and stupid penalties. Armani Sampson returns it for a touchdown. It was called a throat slash. It wasn't a throat slash. He
took his helmet off.
He took his helmet off, which is still an unsportsmanlike conduct, 15 yards. Coach Bell was losing it on the sidelines. That type of stuff has got to stop.
It's so preventable. It's so preventable. You can sit there and if you have, say, a holding penalty or even a pass interference, something like that, those are considered competition penalties, and coaches can live with those to an extent, naturally. But when you're getting things such as pre-snap penalties, which plagued JU in their most penalized game this year against Marist, which they had 180 yards of penalties, a good 80% of them were personal fouls or unsportsmanlike conducts and pre-snap penalties, which are all easily preventable. And we saw, a bad one on Armani Sampson there after he makes a tremendous play. Hey, go out and celebrate. Nothing wrong with that. If he had just run out there and done the old unclipped the chin straps, ran over and high-fived the fans, I think they might have let that slide, though. I don't know. The officials were a little hard to get a read on Saturday night. But you know it's football 101 these days. You can't take your helmet off after a play.
You're going to get called.
You're going to get, it's as easy as it gets to throw that flag.
Absolutely.
So don't give them an opportunity to do things like that.
I think that the penalties have got to stop. Is that a discipline issue in your opinion?
It's funny because you look at some of coaching styles. Some of them let them go a little more free-flowing. Coach Bell is certainly a coach that allows his team to get out there and be a little more loosey-goosey, free-flowing, talking trash, things like that. You look back to the great Miami teams from the 80s. How about the Florida and Florida State teams from the 90s? Boy, they were some of the most penalized teams in the country, but they won,
Right.
So it didn't matter. But if you're losing games, that's when the penalties really starts to stand out, because then you go, well, you can sit there and put your finger on something that you could correct that could go a long ways towards starting to win games and not losing them. If JU's penalized, say, 7 times a game, I can get over that. If it's double digits for over 100 yards, those are the ones that are very concerning. But they're going to get penalties.
That's happened several times this year.
Yeah, it's
you know what I
happened
mean?
a
That's
couple
the
times,
concerning part is maybe one game you're off your game a little bit. Several times in the season where you have double-digit penalties racking up over 100 yards in penalty yards, that could quite possibly give the game away. We saw, close 20 penalties against Marist.
Yeah, it was crazy. That was a game in which both teams were penalized so much it almost became, you thought it was flag football or something. There were so many flags out on the field. It's one of those things where, you'd like to see them cut it back, but historically, JU teams under head coach Kerwin Bell have always been penalized a lot.
Moving forward, we've got Edward Waters College, a Jacksonville showdown this week.
Yep, the Jacksonville Classic.
The Dolphins are off to their best start in program history at 5-0. What are you looking for out of the Dolphins so that they can improve to 6-0 and keep this momentum moving forward through the season?
Just have to go out there and play basic football. Going to be outclassing Edward Waters on Saturday at 1 o'clock. They are an NAIA program who is 2-5 on the year. They have 2 wins over schools that aren't officially even recognized by the NCAA or NAIA. To start the year, they've dropped their last 5. They're in the middle of a rebuilding project. Their head coach, Alvin Wyatt, is a former Bethune-Cookman coach who was very successful down there. Actually beat Kerwin Bell in the first game that Kerwin ever coached here at JU. Bethune-Cookman beat JU. So in the one previous matchup between those two coaches, Coach Wyatt has gotten the better of Coach Bell. I imagine it's going to be a different story come Saturday. You basically use this game to clean some things up. Make sure you're lined up properly. You're not getting pre-snap penalties. You don't get any dumb penalties. And you go out there and just basically execute, and then hopefully the starters are sitting by the second half.
We're hoping the starters are sitting by the second half. We need them healthy for the second half of the season.
That's going to be huge.
To finish out this Pioneer Football League schedule that doesn't really take any prisoners, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a tough stretch down the road. We're trying to remain undefeated. DTR, destined to repeat, is the team motto this year. They're doing everything they can to repeat. I think the Dolphins are extremely lucky to have this cleanup session, essentially, in the middle of the season against Edward Waters. I look to see them run the ball a lot. Yes. I like to see Cade Bell maybe rest that shoulder a good bit, not throw it 60 times like we're used to seeing him in a Coach Kerwin Bell offense. Run the ball. Let your backs do the grunt of the work. Rest your main guys and get ready for the second half of the season.
Certainly. You're going to need as many healthy guys as possible because there are a couple of crucial matchups at the end of this month. At Drake, where JU has never won a game, and at Dayton, where Dayton is one of just the 8 undefeated teams left at the FCS level. So that's a matchup that's setting up to be colossal in Pioneer League lore, if you will. So, yeah, get out there and just take care of business this Saturday at 1. Everybody gets home happy and safe, and it's, you're getting ready for next week.
We're both predicting Edward Waters to lose this football game for the Dolphins to win handily. Do you have a numbers prediction for us, Guy?
I'm not going to give a score for this one.
He's not going to go.
No.
41-14 was the score last week against Stetson. I'll go ahead and say 41-10 will be the score this week for Edward Waters. For Scott Manze, I'm Patrick Wilkins. Thanks so much. You guys have been watching the Dolphin Insider.